The ultimate upgrade, from zero to cosmic hero in a monster-filled world. Please like, share, and subscribe. Episode 11, Frost and Snow. After returning home and having dinner, Gu Jin continued to practice drawing runes. Now the runes he drew have a mysterious charm. He can guide the spiritual energy of heaven and earth by integrating the spiritual power of the runes into the painting process. Let the runes have the power of the gods. It's a pity that he doesn't have the formation drawings now, otherwise he can try to arrange the primary formation. For ordinary people like him who come from ordinary backgrounds, there are very few ways to get the formation drawings. The most likely way is through the academy. The formation department will teach students to arrange the primary formation after they enter the realm of nourishing qi. This is the first opportunity for students to contact the formation drawings. However, these formations are relatively basic formations, such as lighting formations, breeze formations, open fire formations, etc., and they want to get formations with strong attack or defense power. Either rely on excellent grades or be treated specially for outstanding talents, but the formations obtained in this way are ultimately limited. What many students desire most is to get the favor of the mentor and be accepted as a disciple. Like Gu Jin's formation instructor Zheng Ting, as a high-level formation master, countless civilian geniuses hope to become his disciples. Then, let alone the elementary formation, even the advanced formation will have the opportunity to come into contact. In addition to obtaining it through the academy, the most common way is to buy it with spirit stones. As the current currency in circulation, spirit stones have many applications and are hard currency. There are many places in the Magic City where you can buy formation drawings, but the price is not affordable for ordinary people. Finally, it is exchanged through military merit. Military merit is obtained by killing the monsters and beasts that invade the Magic City, such as the endless sea outside the Killing Wall, where many marine beasts attack every year. Practitioners can get military merit by killing beasts, and so can formation masters. In addition, formation masters can also get military merit by repairing damaged formations on the Killing Wall. Military merit is very valuable in the Magic City because the things that can be exchanged for military merit can be said to be what practitioners of all realms need. Gongfa, martial arts, formations, elixirs, cultivation resources, etc. The ruler of the Demon City stipulates that the skills, martial arts, or other mysterious items of many ancestors in the Demon City over the past 2,000 years can be exchanged for military merits. Just like the skills practiced by the ruler of the Demon City, they can be exchanged for military merits. Of course, the military merits required for exchange are huge. As for the destination of the military merits used to exchange the skills, they belong to the owner of the item. If Gu Jin has a skill, he can upload it, and others can exchange it with military merits, and these military merits will belong to him. With these military merits, Gu Jin can also exchange what he needs. The implementation of this strategy can allow the practitioners of the Demon City to let go of their own practice methods, not limit themselves, and can also encourage practitioners to do their best to defend the Demon City. The circulation of military merits increases the trade ability. It can be said to kill two birds with one stone. It is also the strategy that has allowed the Demon City to hold the first line of defense in China for more than 2,000 years without breaking. Even many civilian practitioners can obtain the practice methods suitable for themselves by obtaining military merits, and their strength has increased rapidly. Endless fighting and resource cultivation have made the Magic City, with a population of less than 100 million, as powerful as those top cities, and it has survived the invasion of countless fierce beasts in the ocean. Gu Jin doesn't have many spirit stones now, all of which are accumulated from his parents' pensions, which is enough for him to live. As for military merits, not to mention that there are no beast tides coming or expeditions to annihilate demons and monsters, even if there are, with his current strength, it will disappear without a splash. He can only look for opportunities to see if there are tasks suitable for his strength to earn some military merits. As for the academy, this is a long process. It will not happen overnight for him to show his talent and be appreciated and trained. This can only be done after he breaks through the realm of nourishing qi. Because he will not easily reveal that he has the mental power to arrange the formation in the realm of body refining. Putting down the brush, Gu Jin leaned back in his chair and thought. It seems that it is not easy to get the formation blueprint. After thinking for a while, Gu Jin made a rough decision. Since the formation blueprint cannot be obtained immediately, there is no need to be persistent if it is not urgent. Improve your strength first. Skin, flesh, and bones. These are the parts he needs to upgrade next. After these three parts are upgraded to break the first limit, his strength will definitely make a leap forward. Then he will consider upgrading some parts that will significantly improve his strength. For example, upgrading his hands and feet should have an immediate improvement in his strength and speed. At that time, he may have a good strength. Even if he does not break through to the realm of nourishing qi in a short time, his strength will probably not be worse than that of the cultivators in the realm of nourishing qi. At that time, he can try to go out and hunt beasts in exchange for spirit stones. Then, while accumulating spirit stones to buy array drawings, he will concentrate on breaking through the body refining realm, showing his talent to the academy without revealing the secret, in exchange for the opportunity to obtain array drawings. After determining the short-term plan for the future, Gu Jin continued to practice drawing array patterns. After successfully drawing the first array pattern that can guide the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Gu Jin's progress began to improve. I believe that it won't take long to conquer the primary array rune. Time passed, and when the pointer passed 12 o'clock, Gu Jin put down his pen, stretched his body, and then looked at the refreshed upgrade number. Gu Jin had already decided on the next upgrade, and gave the order without hesitation. Skin upgrade. Boom. A surging sound like a tide came, and energy whistled on Gu Jin's skin, washing his skin. Impurities were removed under the flushing of energy, and the skin absorbed the powerful energy, becoming strong, elastic, smooth, and bright. When the energy was absorbed by the skin, the upgrade process was completed, and Gu Jin immediately looked at the current skin attributes. Skin, transparency +1. Transparent? Seeing the properties of the skin, Gu Jin was somewhat amused. Some women might be overjoyed about this feature, but in his opinion, it did not seem to have much significant improvement in strength. He looked at the skin on his hands, which was now covered with a layer of greasy dirt, and immediately took a shower to remove the impurities discharged from his body. The water flowed over, and the stains faded away. Gu Jin found that his skin was really amazing now. Originally, after the resurrection of spiritual energy, the skin of ordinary people became smooth and clean after being nourished by spiritual energy and practicing, and the defects that needed to be covered with cosmetics in the past disappeared. But Gu Jin's skin now can be as white as snow and as solid as jade. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is better than frost and snow. Episode 12. The Center of the Storm. It feels good. Gu Jin pulled the skin on his face in front of the mirror. The smooth touch was very good. He rolled his eyes and felt helpless that his appearance, which was already ostentatious enough, was now even more enchanting. Then he put on a black robe, walked out of the yard, sat on the rocking chair, picked up the teacup next to him, and took a sip without paying attention to the fact that the tea had cooled down. Slightly bitter. Smacking his lips, Gu Jin raised his hand and looked at the transparent skin on his hand, which was even more dazzling white under the moonlight. Now he had put away his complaints. Every system upgrade brought him earth-shaking changes. Although it seemed to be a bit off this time, Gu Jin believed that there must be something magical. He took out a knife from the space ring and slashed the blade on his arm. 1,000 kilograms. 2,000 kilograms. 3,000 kilograms. 4,000 kilograms. Gu Jin's originally scattered eyes became brighter, and finally the corners of his mouth could not help but rise. He used his greatest force to slash at his arm, but he couldn't break the skin that seemed as thin as a cicada's wing. Looking closer, the place where the blade just landed was still flawless. This defense is too strong. Gu Jin couldn't help but marvel. In the end, he still relied on explosive skills to break through the skin's defense. After a few attempts, Gu Jin also tested the defense of the skin. The defense ability has increased greatly, but the best defense effect is for sharp weapons, such as swords and daggers. His skin is now extremely elastic and flexible. When the blade falls, it will unload the force, or even let the blade slide away, so that it cannot cause damage. For blunt weapons, such as fists, direct hits, although they can't break the defense, the force will penetrate the skin and damage the inside. Of course, the force is also weakened, and the damage is greatly reduced. So, now Gu Jin's skin looks like it can be broken by a blow, and it is as soft as frost and snow, but the defense is really strong. It's really elixirs skin. Gu Jin couldn't help but pinch his cheeks again, and the touch was really good. He took back his own jokes and began to practice the 36-style bodybuilding method. Facing the moonlight, he practiced every move meticulously, pursuing the ultimate perfection, and stopped only when he reached the limit of his body. Level 2. Gu Jin endured the pain of tearing his body and showed a happy expression. The transformation brought by the skin upgrade allowed him to break through from the middle of the first level to the second level directly, and now the speed of practicing the bodybuilding method is much faster than before. Boom! Clench his fist and hit directly. The air was crushed by the sudden force, making a roar, and then turned into a shrill wind whistling, sweeping the dust on the ground. 6,000 kilograms of force. After the punch, Gu Jin could no longer support himself and sat on the rocking chair, but he couldn't stop smiling on his face. 6,000 kilograms of force is enough to rival ordinary 6th-level practitioners of bodybuilding. Such physical potential gave him the opportunity to reach a higher level in the future. After taking another shower, he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The next day, Gu Jin got up on time, washed up, and took the train to the academy. Along the way, pedestrians, both men and women, cast their eyes on him. He was used to it. In the past, he would attract a lot of attention when he walked on the road. But today, the gazes were too undisguised, especially the girls, who looked like they wanted to pounce on him, just like wolves and tigers. And what about jealousy and envy? In the end, Gu Jin had no choice but to come to the academy with a cold face and pretend to ignore everything. But when he arrived at the gate of the academy, Gu Jin found that the gazes became more intense. What was the matter with the look of talking about him? Gu Jin curled his lips in annoyance, and his mental power radiated, listening to the whispers of the students passing by. After a moment, he understood that it turned out that the news that he defeated the 4th-level body refining practitioner in the martial arts square yesterday had spread. Originally, this was just a small matter that could not be any smaller. Even the body refining realm defeated the chi cultivation realm, but such news could only slightly surprise the students of the Demon City Cultivation Academy. They really had a high vision, so they could see far. But there was no way, because the protagonist of the incident was Gu Jin, that guy with a demonic appearance, but a waste of mud. Now the waste actually fought back, and from what he heard was not good enough. Now he could instantly defeat the 4th level. How could it not be surprising? Of course, everyone was more surprised, and then gossiped, but not too shocked or anything. Because for most students, the body refining realm is really not worth mentioning, and no matter how surprising things happen in the body refining realm, they can only use it as a topic of conversation after dinner. What really makes them pay attention and admire are those amazing talents. Gu Jin didn't care about being used as a topic of gossip. Anyway, it wasn't the first time. He could face it freely. Ignoring the eyes around him, he came to the place where the class was. When passing the winding wooden bridge, Gu Jin still had the leisure to stop and admire the lotus in the lake. This kind of lotus that will be full of luster at night is called yueha. It has no special ability. If there is anything, it is very beautiful. It was not until the bell rang that Gu Jin quickened his pace and walked into the hall. As soon as he entered the door, he saw such a look. This is also the reason why Gu Jin did not want to come in too early. Although he did not care about being stared at, it did not mean that he was willing. The person staring at him was not a stunning beauty? Zhang Ting stepped into the hall on time under the lingering sound of the bell. As usual, she did not say a word, but before the formal lecture, she glanced at Gu Jin inconspicuously. Gu Jin, who was sensitive, naturally noticed it and couldn't help laughing in his heart. Could such gossip still reach the ears of these tutors? Zhang Ting did hear the rumors about Gu Jin. In fact, compared with the ridicule and contempt of Gu Jin by most students, many tutors who taught Gu Jin still had a good impression of him. At least the first impression was very pleasing to the eye. Secondly, his personality is elegant and leisurely, calm and steady in the face of things, and he is also a little free and easy, like a wisp of wind that is hard to fathom. Many instructors have sighed that if it were not for the limitation of his talent, Gu Jin's character alone would have caught the eyes of many instructors and made them want to take him in. In the Magic City Academy, there are several different situations for taking someone in. In the eyes of ordinary people, taking someone in means taking him in as a disciple, but this is the rarest in the Magic City Academy. More often, taking someone in means taking him in as a disciple, and the instructor fulfills the responsibility of teaching and answering questions like the ancient sages. Another way is to take someone in as a disciple, but this identity is limited to the master and the apprentice, and does not involve the power and family behind both parties. Because many instructors have the inheritance of the sect, and some students also have family backgrounds. In these two ways, the relationship between the two is limited to the two people and has nothing to do with identity and background. And the last one is the disciple in the eyes of ordinary people, the real direct disciple. The sect records, the family leaves the name, has the right of inheritance, and has the status and seniority. Episode 13, Awakening Talent. Zhang Ting was only slightly surprised by Gu Jin's sudden rise, and sighed that this student finally made it, then put the matter aside and began to teach seriously. Gu Jin had already mastered the content, but he still listened very seriously, and he was still a little reluctant to finish it after class. As expected, he is a high-level array master, and the world seen by different levels of vision is also different. Gu Jin comprehended according to elementary array runes, and what he comprehended was naturally the knowledge in it, but Zhang Ting would extend the topic from time to time during the lecture, explaining the deeper meaning of the runes in a way that they could accept. This also made Gu Jin plan to go back and read elementary array runes again today. No longer constrained by the content of the book, we must extend our thinking and try to explore different perceptions. After class, many students dispersed in groups of 3 or 5, and many students hesitated, looking curious, as if they wanted to come forward and talk to Gu Jin. Gu Jin smiled lightly, nodded as a greeting, and left. He didn't care about their curious gossip. It's not that he holds a grudge. In fact, there is nothing to hold a grudge. Just like in his previous life, the schoolmates always lived in groups. Once someone was alone, they would be criticized. The criticism of the crowd is often not because of disgust for the lone person or something, but because of the herd mentality, and it is very likely that they will have some contact with the lone person in the future. Those who have criticized him will find that he is completely different from what they imagined. Why did everyone say that about him at the beginning? Now the classmates around Gu Jin have this feeling, and some even plan to take the initiative to contact Gu Jin and want to know him. Unfortunately, Gu Jin didn't have this idea, and he didn't have the heart to deal with their understanding, nor was he interested in letting them understand. He came to the book pavilion alone again, smelling the bamboo leaves, tasting the clear spring water, and sitting by the window. But today, on the small table in front of him, there was not only a copy of Intermediate Formation Runes, but also a copy of Kendo. His eyes wandered between the two books, and finally Gu Jin picked up The Way of the Sword. After having some insights in the school just now and planning to review primary formation runes, Gu Jin did not plan to continue studying intermediate formation runes. Only by truly consolidating the foundation can we build a higher building better. Otherwise, if he continues to study intermediate formation runes now, he may have some insights on primary formation runes later. It is undoubtedly a waste of time to overturn today's ideas again. So, he picked up The Way of the Sword, planning to learn a weapon method. The Way of the Sword. Looking at the name, it seems to be some high-end sword secrets, but in fact, it is just an introduction to the most basic sword basics. The opening episode introduces the types of swords, the functions of various parts of the sword, and even a seemingly true and false history of the birth of the sword. From Gu Jin's perspective more than 2,000 years ago, the rhetoric in it is a bit too mythical. The sword was originally used as a symbol of the superior status, like an authority. This is a fact. Ancient kings all wore swords, and the rumors about the 10 famous swords in China are mostly related to kings. But The Way of the Sword says that the sword is the authority of the emperor, appointed by heaven, inheriting the rhythm of the sky, being admired by all living beings, being straight and unyielding, and suppressing the world. It is indeed a bit exaggerated. Gu Jin turned to another page. Except for the exaggerated rhetoric on the first page, the rest of the content is very simple, using the most plain and easy-to-understand sentences to explain the basics of the sword. How to taste the sword, how to hold the sword, how to draw the sword, how to hold the sword. Gu Jin seemed to have entered a new Wang Yang, and was immersed in knowledge and couldn't extricate himself, and his hands were waving from time to time as if holding an object in the air. Sometimes his eyes were shining, sometimes his brows were frowning and thinking, and he repeated the same action more than 10 times. If there were people who were new to swordsmanship here, they would find that every time Gu Jin swung his sword, he was practicing the basics of swordsmanship. Stab, point, chop, cut, collapse, wipe, pick, circle. The key points of each move, the points to grasp the force, etc., were all explained in the book. But Gu Jin still felt that there was a gap between him and the sword. This gap was so subtle that it was almost imperceptible, as if it did not exist, and could not hinder his amazing understanding in swordsmanship. But it made him feel like a fishbone stuck in his throat. With Gu Jin's current understanding, he could read 10 lines of Kendo at a glance, memorize it after scanning it, and understand it after thinking about it. In just over an hour, he had a complete understanding. Gu Jin put down the classics and looked at the bamboo forest outside the window. The discomfort in his heart was finally suppressed. What is the reason? Is it because I don't really hold the sword? Gu Jin whispered, but he knew it was not the case. However, he decided to buy a sword later. Maybe when he really holds the sword and practices, he will have a chance to break the barrier. Gu Jin's current mastery of swordsmanship is no less than that of ordinary people who have practiced swordsmanship for several years. Of course, this state is still at the level of art. He asked the old man if the book, Kendo, could be borrowed. The old man nodded in agreement. Gu Jin registered and said goodbye before leaving. The old man looked at Gu Jin's back, his cloudy eyes were a little curious. Yesterday he was still in the middle of the first stage, but today he is in the second stage. Yesterday he was still studying the formation, but today he picked up the sword. Suddenly, the old man smiled and shook his head. It was really interesting. As for the reason why Gu Jin advanced so quickly, he did not delve into it. The spiritual energy has been revived for more than 2,000 years. How many magical things are incomprehensible to the world? Moreover, there are many people like Gu Jin who have made no progress in more than 10 years of hard practice, but suddenly realized it and made rapid progress since then. Many of these people have awakened their talents. More than 2,000 years ago, when the aura was revived, the first to appear were not the practitioners, but the awakeners. Relying on their talents, they awakened various magical abilities in the environment of aura revival and became the first group of people to fight against demons, monsters, and beasts. Later, it was discovered that the Awakeners relied too much on talents, and although the Awakeners were powerful, they were too few in number, so people began to explore the application of aura. Under the research of many Awakeners and scholars, the way of cultivation was opened up step by step. As time passed, practitioners became popular and various different development trajectories were extended, such as formation masters, alchemists, weapon refiners, etc., all of which belong to practitioners. And the number of people who rely on awakening talents gradually decreased. Only a few families or sects that inherited the powerful talents of their ancestors in their bloodlines will cherish them very much. Such families and sects are extremely powerful, but it is not easy to awaken talents. This is the case for forces that focus on maintaining bloodlines, let alone ordinary people. However, with a large population base, any kind of anomaly is likely to appear. And Gu Jin's upgraded talent may also be considered an awakening ability. But his ability is unprecedented and unlikely to be surpassed in the future. Episode 14, Qin Dynasty Ancient Sword. Leaving the library, walking on the bustling streets of the Magic City, holding a jade-like object in his hand, the jade popped up a light screen. This thing is like a computer in the previous life, but it uses spiritual energy, and the signal is also transmitted through spiritual energy. Spiritual energy is everywhere, so the signal is very good. Gu Jin is searching for a place to buy a sword. There are many places to buy swords, and Gu Jin is familiar with many shops, but the swords sold in those shops are too expensive. Many shops sell swords at the spiritual weapon level. Weapons are forged with ordinary alloy metals, which are the most common, and then there are spiritual weapons forged with special materials. Spirit weapons are divided into low level, medium level, high level, and top level. Anything higher is not what Gu Jin can search for at present, and they only appear in the hands of the strong. Even if it is sold, it will not be for his current level. And Gu Jin knows that a top-level spiritual weapon level longsword is displayed in the center of the hall of the storage building. The longsword is clearly priced at 100,000 high-level spiritual stones. What is the value of 100,000 high-level spiritual stones? One high-level spirit stone is equal to 10 intermediate spirit stones. One intermediate spirit stone is equal to 10 primary spirit stones, and one primary spirit stone is enough for Gu Jin to eat and drink for a month. 100,000 high-level spirit stones are equivalent to 10 million primary spirit stones. How long can this last for Gu Jin? More than 800,000 years. Gu Jin glanced at the long sword that could make people feel the cold light even through the screen, and then he left after enjoying the sight and continued to look for a store within his ability. Unfortunately, he could not afford to buy an ordinary alloy iron sword or a spiritual weapon of the lowest level. Gu Jin sighed, but there was no worry on his face, but a casual smile. Suddenly, Gu Jin, who was strolling around casually, stopped in front of an old store. The retro facade was extremely incompatible with a real estate sales and an insurance sales on both sides. Ancient Artifact Pavilion. Gu Jin read the ancient words on the door plaque and sighed that the words were well written. Suddenly, he walked into the store out of curiosity. As soon as he entered the store, he saw something that made Gu Jin's eyes widen. Terracotta warriors? Gu Jin looked at the familiar-looking burnt figures in astonishment and then scanned the things around him. Yuan blue and white porcelain. Tang Sankai. Ming rosewood chair. Bronze tripod. Pig dragon jade. Ru kiln. Gu Jin walked around the store, looking at each piece of the vicissitudes of time, but intact, and, even apart from the breath of time, it was like a brand new object, and he couldn't help but marvel. This little brother, it seems that you're a connoisseur of goods. A middle-aged man wearing round-frame glasses and a long gown came out, with a shrewd look between his eyebrows. I just think these objects are very tasteful. Gu Jin smiled, and then asked, by the way, why do these objects seem to have gone through many years, but they are still intact and look like new? In fact, what Gu Jin wanted to ask was that most of the national treasures and antiques he saw more than 2,000 years ago had deep traces of history and were even older than these. He really wanted to know which predecessor was so tasteful that he still managed the great cause of counterfeiting in an era when ferocious beasts were rampant and demons and monsters were rampant. Hey, little brother, you're really insightful. You hit the nail on the head. The man's eyes lit up, and he took out the paper fan from his waist and opened it. Gu Jin glanced at the folding fan. There was a painting and a poem on the fan, a picture of a lady, and the signature was Tang Yin. Yes, the first of the 4 great talents. The man smiled and shook the folding fan and said, this has to start from more than 2,000 years ago. As soon as he started talking, Gu Jin felt familiar. Isn't this the opening remark that all kinds of old-timers in antique streets used to deceive rookies in the past? The man's ability to observe words and expressions is very good. Seeing Gu Jin's expression, he smiled and turned around. He knocked on a heavy bronze tripod with his folding fan and said, "Little brother, this matter really has to start from more than 2,000 years ago." That was when the spiritual energy was revived. After listening to the man's words, Gu Jin understood, and his eyes changed when he looked at the things around him. I didn't expect these things to be not imitations, but genuine ones. With the revival of spiritual energy and the arrival of the era of fighting, survival has become the first principle. Antiques and gold and silver that were once treasured have lost their value and even become a burden on the road to survival. A large number of antiques have been abandoned, many of which were destroyed in battles, and a small number have been preserved by people with obsessions. Under the nourishment of spiritual energy, many antiques have wiped off their ancient traces, rebloomed with brilliance, and even repaired themselves. This has attracted the attention of the world. Many people speculated whether antiques would also show magical abilities under spiritual energy, and even set off a rush to snatch them. Unfortunately, under the nourishment of spiritual energy, antiques have been restored and become new, but no strange abilities have been revealed. After the research was fruitless, it was gradually abandoned. As time goes by, in this era of pursuing cultivation strength, what is valued is cultivation resources and natural treasures. How can these useless ancient artifacts still have meaning? The owner of this ancient artifact pavilion is also helpless. He has poor cultivation qualifications and inherited this family of useless ancient artifacts, so he has to guard them and coax them one by one. The boss didn't use all kinds of flowery words to deceive Gu Jin, because he could see that Gu Jin was really interested. To treat such a customer, the most suitable thing is to be honest. Speak the truth. If the other party wants to buy, you don't need to talk nonsense. If he doesn't want to buy, it's useless for you to talk eloquently. Gu Jin looked at the many ancient artifacts and couldn't help but feel emotional. No one can understand the obsession of people for more than 2,000 years for these ancient artifacts. This is culture, inheritance, and the sustenance of the times. Unfortunately, now except for him, no one may be able to look at these ancient artifacts with this mentality. What's the price? Gu Jin picked up a bronze longsword. The sword body is slender, with ridges on both sides, for vertical and 4 fangs. It is obviously an 8-sided Qin dynasty ancient sword. And judging from the complex and noble patterns on the sword guard, it is obvious that the original owner is extraordinary. The humming sound is pleasant when waving, and it faintly reveals murderous aura. It can be imagined that after thousands of years, the murderous aura still remains. How many dead souls are under the sword? However, times have changed. This noble blade, which was once a divine weapon, is now only as expensive as an ordinary alloy sword. People are even more willing to buy alloy swords because they can be customized. As for the history, charm, and traces of time of the ancient artifacts, sorry, can it improve combat power? Otherwise, what's the point? I have never seen anyone look at these ancient artifacts with such eyes, little brother. You are a person who understands them, better than me who lives with them day and night. The man was a little moved, and then waved his hand and said, "This sword is given to you, brother." Episode 15. Independence from the World. Gu Jin looked at the boss, who was obviously shrewd in his character, in surprise, but did not refuse. He nodded with a smile, picked up the long sword, and walked to a bronze tripod. "How much is this? Why are you so polite? I'll give it to you as a gift." "What about this?" "I'll give it to you as a gift." "What about this?" "Give it to you." "What about this?" "Give it to you." "Give it to you." "Give it to you." Seeing the boss gritting his teeth and squeezing out the word, "Give it to you," the expression of emotion that had just been revealed had long disappeared. Gu Jin smiled and stopped teasing him. He took out a small bag from his personal space, poured out a dozen primary spirit stones, put one away, and then handed the rest to the boss. "Leave this one for me to live on, and you can keep the rest, including the sword." "How many can you buy?" "Boss, tell me how much you can buy." Gu Jin had never intended to accept the boss's gift. He also knew that these ancient artifacts were not worth much now, and he did not hold the extraordinary idea of picking up a bargain or being able to research these things himself. After all, the ancestors of more than 2,000 years, countless strong men have studied it and found that it is really useless. Even if he really believes that he is the son of destiny, can this destiny compare with the wisdom of countless people in the past 2,000 years? This is just that he wants to be willful once, and keep some things that can still be seen outside of memory. The boss was stunned for a while and woke up. Seeing the spirit stone in his hand, his eyes lit up. This is a rare big business for him, but then he thought of his sentimental look just now. Even if he is thick-skinned, he was embarrassed to turn his face. "Boss, just calculate the price in your heart, buy as much as you can." Gu Jin said with a smile, then turned around and pointed to the ancient artifacts in the room. If possible, please keep these ancient artifacts for me. I will buy them all in a short time. Buy all? The boss said in disbelief. Little brother, I just told you the truth. These things are really useless except for looking at them. You might as well buy some spiritual tools with this money. Even the lowest level spiritual tools are more useful than these things in the room. Gu Jin shook his head and smiled at the boss's advice. He didn't expect these things to be very practical, but just for sentiment. Well, okay, I'll give you some honest calculations. Originally, I didn't think about opening this store, but I couldn't find anyone to take over. Since you insist on it, I won't pretend. 1,000 primary spiritual stones, take them all. Gu Jin nodded when he heard it. This amount is not small for his current situation, but Gu Jin still agreed. After a while, he will have enough strength to ensure that he can go out to hunt beasts, and he should be able to collect this amount of spiritual stones soon. The boss changed his shrewd look and waved his hand generously, indicating that Gu Jin could take whatever he wanted now, as long as he settled the bill within a year. Gu Jin has a space ring, but he didn't really move around as the boss said. After all, he only paid a dozen spirit stones, which was far from the payment. In addition to the 8-sided Qin dynasty sword, Gu Jin also bought several bronze tripods from the Shang and Zhou dynasties, chimes from the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period, terracotta warriors, yuan blue and white porcelain, a gorgeous gold mask of an unknown dynasty, and a Han jade pendant. Finally, he took the folding fan from the boss's hand, put the things into the space ring, and left. The boss looked at Gu Jin's unsheathed bronze sword hanging by his side, and his casual back waving the folding fan in one hand, and was curious and puzzled, and laughed dumbly. I really met a strange person today. When he returned home, Gu Jin looked at the folding fan with a picture of a lady in his hand. Although his appreciation of ancient paintings was basically zero, he felt that the painting was really good because he could understand the two words tangyin. Then he looked at the bronze ancient sword. The sword body was slender, with ridges on both sides. The sword pattern was noble and complex. The sword was cast as a whole, with a restrained edge and a flowing green glow. It was more than 5,000 years old, but it still exuded murderous aura. What an 8-sided Qin dynasty ancient sword. Unfortunately, most practitioners would choose a customized alloy long sword instead of this one at the same value. Because apart from the breadth of vicissitudes of history, it really has no other unique features. Then Gu Jin hung the long sword by his side, attached the folding fan to his waist, took out the ancient artifacts he had just bought from the space ring one by one, and began to arrange them. His house was a 2-story building, but the layout was simple. Apart from the basic furniture, there was nothing extra. Looking at the layout of the house, Gu Jin thought about where to put what ancient artifacts. The bronze tripod was placed in the center, the terracotta warriors were placed on the side of the entrance, the yuan blue and white porcelain stood on the table, and a set of chimes were placed against the wall. Finally, basically all the ancient artifacts were arranged, except for the golden mask and jade pendant, which were stored in the space ring. Gu Jin nodded with satisfaction and looked at the time. It was already night, and he hadn't eaten dinner yet. After making a simple dinner and eating, he came to the yard and sat down on the rocking chair with a folding fan. The long sword was casually placed beside him, shaking the fan and sipping tea, like a young man who was independent of the world, but this was due to the bonus brought by his outstanding appearance and demeanor. If there were no such bonuses, he would only make people think he was old-fashioned. Flipping through Kendo, he occasionally raised the bronze ancient sword and waved it, leaving green traces under the night sky, but no matter how he explored, he couldn't figure out what the gap was. It was so erratic that he couldn't catch it. When the early morning came and the upgrade number was refreshed, Gu Jin immediately upgraded his skin. The energy tide swept over again, roaring on his skin, tempering his skin. Skin, transparency +2. After a moment, the energy tide was absorbed by the skin, and the upgrade was completed. Gu Jin raised his hand, looked at the skin that was so white and glowing at night, and picked up the bronze ancient sword without hesitation. If someone saw his current behavior, especially a girl, they would definitely sigh that he was wasting heaven's gift. Such perfect skin, how can you still take a sword to cut it? After some tests, the skin's flexibility and elasticity increased, the defense increased greatly, and the speed of practicing the body forging method also increased. After a night of practice, Gu Jin dragged his weak body to sleep after taking a shower after reaching the extreme. Grasping the afterglow of the skin upgrade, Gu Jin greatly increased the speed of tempering the skin. There were signs of entering the middle stage of the second stage overnight. I believe that if I work harder tomorrow, I can enter the middle stage of the second stage without waiting for the skin upgrade. Episode 16. Qualification Price. The next day, the sun was hanging in the sky, and the bright gilded light was shining, bringing vitality. Gu Jin woke up on time and practiced the bodybuilding method in the sunshine. After a night's rest, the body can be restored, and the bodybuilding method can be used again. Now he practices once every morning and once after upgrading in the early morning. The morning is normal practice, and the early morning is to grasp the aftermath of the upgrade. After all, the upgrade of each part of the body is not a one-time process, but a long process. For example, after his heart was upgraded to break the first limit, it is still constantly absorbing spiritual energy and strengthening various parts of the body after tempering while forging blood. And the golden flame in the heart is constantly integrated into it. The foundation brought by the heart has not been fully understood, let alone the skin that has just started to upgrade. With sweat all over his body, Gu Jin stopped practicing the bodybuilding method, took a shower, and went to the academy. The bronze ancient sword was placed in the space ring, and the folding fan was held in his hand. From time to time, he unfolded it and stared at the painting and poetry on it, but he still couldn't see what was going on. Listen to the new insights Zhang Ting brought him in class, and then go to the martial arts square to take the physical training course. On the way, many people heard that Gu Jin defeated the 4th-level physical training practitioner in an instant, and they all wanted to challenge him, wanting to become famous by defeating Gu Jin. Unfortunately, in the face of these challenges, Gu Jin told everyone a reality. Gu Jin, I've heard that you defeated the 4th-level physical training practitioner with one sword. Are you brave enough to compete with me? The man said confidently. Challenge? Sure. Take out 10,000 primary spirit stones as a bet, and I will accept it. If you win, the spirit stones belong to me, and if you lose, you take them back. Gu Jin leaned his body, his eyes moved away from kendo, glanced at him, and opened his folding fan and said slowly. The man was speechless when he heard this, and pointed at him angrily and said, Why? Why do I challenge you and ask you to give me 10,000 spirit stones? If you win, you get the spirit stones back, and if you lose, I get them back? This is unfair. Is it unfair? Gu Jin smiled noncommittally, waving his folding fan, and looked at the man with a smile. I'm telling you that challenging others requires qualifications. If you can't pay the price, you naturally don't have the qualifications. Although Gu Jin's smile was elegant and his voice was gentle, his words were no less than a sword and a knife piercing his heart, making his face flush. He was so angry that he couldn't help but attack Gu Jin, but unfortunately, Gu Jin closed the folding fan with a snap, and the folding fan seemed to swing casually, but it pointed at the majestic teacher on the high platform. The man was immediately poured with a basin of cold water, and he put away his anger and turned away. The college clearly stipulates that a duel between you and me is allowed, but it cannot be forced. Otherwise, it will be regarded as an attack on a classmate, and the consequences will be serious. Gu Jin's words stopped many people who wanted to use him to become famous, but there were still many people who were unwilling to give up and stepped forward to provoke him. But no matter how the other party provoked and angered him, Gu Jin always responded lightly. 10,000 spirit stones. 10,000 spirit stones? What are you doing without 10,000 spirit stones? You can't even take out 10,000 spirit stones. Why should I accept it? These words made everyone who came to provoke Gu Jin leave angrily. Gu Jin was able to say this, of course, he had the confidence. He was not the kind of person who thought he was invincible when he got an opportunity. On the contrary, he was very calm. The students in this martial arts field are all in the body refining realm. Taking courses here is to speed up the speed of cultivation, hoping to enter the qi nourishing realm as soon as possible. Once you enter the stage of nourishing qi, you will not stay here any longer. Gu Jin entered the middle of the second stage this morning with a total strength of 7,000 kilograms, which is comparable to the ordinary 7th stage of body refining. In addition to his brain-thinking ability at this time, and the swordsmanship that he felt was not at the entry level, but compared to others, it was equivalent to several years of hard practice. Even if the 9th stage of body refining challenges him, he is not worried. The ordinary 9th stage only has a strength of 10,000 kilograms. His gap is not so big that he needs to look up to it. Gu Jin is confident that he can defeat it with his thinking and swordsmanship. Even if he has a rare talent or a genius who practices special martial arts, he can just show the golden flame in his heart and say that it is his awakened talent. So he has already calculated the gains and losses and retreat. Unfortunately, no one took the bait, or perhaps no one present was qualified to challenge. Because 10,000 spirit stones is really not a small amount. Those who can take it out are basically from a family or have a backer. And can people from a family or have a backer still linger in the body refining realm? Of course, There are still some oddballs, such as Chun-Shin, who is unlearned and unskilled, but those who come from a family, who have been influenced and nurtured since childhood, are always the elites. On the contrary, the dandies are the oddballs. After Chun-Shin lost all his face, he never came to the academy. Gu Jin, who originally wanted to make a fortune, closed the kendo, regretfully, waved his folding fan and left. Looking at his back, everyone was silent for some reason. They always felt that they and Gu Jin were from two different worlds. Why did they mock Gu Jin? Because Gu Jin was obviously the lowest aptitude, but still showed a mentality that the instructors admired. This shouldn't be the case at all. In their opinion, Gu Jin, who had low aptitude, should complain about the world, feel inferior and self-pitying, let them pity him, and give him his sympathy. But Gu Jin never bowed his head. Now, Gu Jin has suddenly risen, and everyone feels that he and themselves are from two different worlds. That leisurely, free and easy, casual and elegant attitude has attracted many people's envy and jealousy. In fact, they long to be as unique as Gu Jin, but they envy him because they can't do it. Envy and jealousy are not much different, and the emotional resonance is the same. No matter where you are, you don't have to worry about the spread of news. There are always people who are trembling with fear and carrying this burden to spread gossip to every corner. The news that Gu Jin has the qualification to challenge 10,000 spirit stones has attracted the attention of students in the Yangqi realm, and even reached the ears of the top geniuses in the Qinggu realm. 10,000 spirit stones, unless they are from a wealthy family, or they are still students, few people can take out such a number at will. Many people think that Gu Jin's condition is to refuse the challenge, and he deliberately set this basically impossible condition. But some people still wonder, if someone really takes out 10,000 spirit stones, will Gu Jin agree? There are really such people who try. Birds of a feather flock together, and people are divided into groups. This is an extremely correct saying. Although there are few strange people, there are no shortage of strange people at every level, which is also reasonable. Chun-Shin was now trying to persuade another weirdo to help him take revenge with the angry thoughts of a weirdo after his defeat. This weirdo was slightly more advanced than him in the way of weirdos, and was at the realm of nourishing qi. He was considered the leader of the weirdos in the realm of nourishing qi. Episode 17, Pioneer Master, luxurious private room, fine wine and delicious food, singing girls dancing, extravagant music, and the atmosphere of decadence. Lu Yu, you must teach that loser a lesson this time. He defeated me last time by luck and took advantage of my underestimation. He stepped on me to get to the top. Now his fame has soared. He even challenged him for 10,000 spirit stones. You really don't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. A villain is successful. Chun-Shin roared hysterically, his voice was hoarse and out of tune. After roaring, he took a big sip of wine to calm down his fluctuating breath. Hey, I brought you here today to have fun and relax. Why are you so angry? That scum is scum. If it's slightly dirty your clothes, you have to lie on the ground and argue with him. A young man with a frivolous smile, deep eyes, and a thin body waved his hand. Chun-Shin calmed down the anger brought by the humiliation, drank a sip of wine, and looked straight at Lu Yu. Just tell me, will you help me or not? Lu Yu pushed away the heavily made-up dancer beside him, holding the wine glass and approaching. His frivolous smile suddenly revealed a shrewdness. It's not that I don't want to help. It's really that I am in the state of nourishing qi, and I am looking for trouble with a worthless waste. It's really a loss of face. I don't want to dirty my shoes if I step on that kind of mud. Hearing Lu Yu's roundabout words, Chun-Shin didn't know what the other party meant, that he was asking for benefits from him. Snorting coldly, the wine glass fell on the table, and looked straight at Lu Yu. I'll pay the 10,000 spirit stones. Teach that waste a good lesson for me. If you win, the spirit stones are yours. If you lose. Before Chun-Shin finished speaking, Lu Yu smiled brightly and put his arm around his shoulders. It's impossible to lose. A hint of coldness was revealed in his deep eyes. Gu Jin went to get out of class after experiencing many challengers' self-promotion, interviews, and rejections. Today, he did not go to the book pavilion, but went home directly. Reviewing primary formation runes, practicing the integration of mental power into the formation runes, guiding the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, holding the bronze ancient sword to practice basic swordsmanship, trying to grasp that elusive barrier. Finally, when the early morning came, the upgrade times were refreshed. Upgrade, skin. Gu Jin lay on the rocking chair, shaking his folding fan, closing his eyes, and those who didn't know thought he was resting. The skin was washed by the surging energy tide, becoming more and more transparent, and the toughness and elasticity were stronger. Skin, transparency +3. Waiting for the surging energy to be absorbed and calmed, and the upgrade was completed, Gu Jin picked up the bronze ancient sword beside him again, playing a song of Dongfeng on his arm. Now his skin's defensive ability is difficult for ordinary practitioners who use weapons in the body refining realm to hurt him. If you want to break his defense, I'm afraid you must at least have a spiritual power in the chi-nourishing realm. Taking advantage of the aftermath of the upgrade, Gu Jin began to practice the bodybuilding method, persevering and feeling the most subtle changes in his body every time. After each upgrade, the upper limit of the bodybuilding method will be increased. Gu Jin will not miss the slight progress, so that his body will completely reach the limit state where one more point will hurt the body and one less point will be more than enough. Then he gritted his teeth and insisted on taking a bath and fell into a deep sleep as soon as he lay down. The next day, he continued to practice the bodybuilding method and then endured the body in the limit state, wielding the bronze ancient sword like an old man doing morning exercises. Stab, pick, cut, wipe, collapse. Each move was slow, but it was extremely stable, without a single error. He put away his sword, then casually placed the unsheathed long sword next to the rocking chair and took a leisurely step to take a shower. The warm water washed over his muscles, and with his heart constantly tempering his spiritual energy and transporting it through his blood throughout his body, the fatigue in Gu Jin's body gradually disappeared. It won't take long for him to recover to a perfect state again. Gu Jin felt the state at this time. The second level is the ultimate. 8,600 strengths. The result is gratifying. Before breaking through the third level, he has the strength of an ordinary practitioner's 8th level of physical training, plus the thinking ability of the brain, the swordsmanship that he feels is not entry level, and the heart gold flame as a trump card. Now Gu Jin has the confidence to face practitioners in the state of nourishing chi. It's not even rationality that tells him that it's the most suitable time to go out and hunt beasts when his skin, flesh, and bones are upgraded to the level that breaks the limit. He can set off now. Taking the train, he arrived at the academy under the attention of pedestrians and passengers. Today's situation is not much better than yesterday, and there are even signs of getting worse. Who told him to come up with the condition of 10,000 spirit stones for the qualification of the challenge? Now this matter has spread in the academy, and many people are paying attention. Will anyone take out 10,000 spirit stones to challenge Gu Jin? Gu Jin can now completely ignore the eyes of the people around him. He shakes his folding fan. The pictures of the ladies on it are outstanding, but they do not cover his brilliance, but complement each other. Now he is thinking about what new attributes will appear after his skin breaks the limit tonight. Fair? White enough to blind others' eyes, gaining a strategic advantage when fighting against the enemy. Or elasticity. Not only can it bounce away crow's feet, but it can also bounce back other people's attacks. This seems good. Or will it be moist? What ability does moistness have? Water comes out when you pinch it? Gu Jin's thoughts are wild and unconstrained. He doesn't pay attention to the eyes of the people around him. After concentrating on Zhang Ting's class, he didn't rush home, but went to the book pavilion. He found that the book pavilion is a good place, which makes people feel quiet and peaceful. Sitting by the window, sipping the spring water, holding kendo and reading. The old man suddenly became curious when he didn't see Gu Jin come yesterday, and then thought that the other party had borrowed kendo, so he didn't need to stay here. But unexpectedly, Gu Jin came again, and he came to read the classic, Kendo. When Gu Jin's mind was immersed in the books, two people were looking for him in the academy, which was extremely vast and like a city within a city. These two people were Chun Shin, the pioneer of the body training world, and Lu Yu, the master of the chi training world, who he invited to avenge him. The two originally thought that they would wait for Gu Jin outside the gate of the formation department after class, but after waiting for a long time, Gu Jin's figure did not appear. They asked other students of the formation department, but no one knew where Gu Jin was. After all, Gu Jin came alone, and no one really knew where he went. Well, I think he went to the direction of the book pavilion. A classmate of Gu Jin said that he would finish organizing the content of Zhang Ting's explanation every day before leaving, and he was often the last person. So he noticed these days that Gu Jin did not leave directly after class, but walked deeper into the island. That was the direction of the book pavilion. Episode 18, The Charm of the Sword. Chun Shin looked at Lu Yu and asked him what he was going to do now. Just wait here. Are you afraid he will run away? Lu Yu was not in a hurry. Seeing Chun Shin's impatient expression, he smiled and said, Okay, wait. Chun Shin gritted his teeth. He really couldn't wait any longer. He wanted to see Gu Jin being knocked to the ground and kneeling down to beg for mercy. Only by making him more pitiful and miserable could he make up for his damaged dignity. Gu Jin didn't know that he was being targeted by the pioneers and masters of the weird world. He was still fully devoted to kendo. In the end, he felt that he was not able to comprehend it well while sitting in the attic. He stood up, stepped lightly into the air, jumped out of the window, stretched out his right hand, and a Qingyu ancient sword appeared in his hand out of thin air. He held kendo in one hand and the bronze ancient sword in the other. The moment he landed on the ground, the long sword hummed and trembled and stabbed straight out. This sword was well behaved, and it didn't look unusual, but it was steady. The hand holding the sword was calm, and the hand extended slowly, and the sword moved with the hand. The sword tip drew a faint green mark in the air, which was faint and fleeting. The charm was very much in line with the bamboo forest with green leaves. The long sword stabbed out, stepped to stop, turned around and put away the sword. The sword swept across the air, chopped down with the momentum, lifted up, turned around. The sword tip shook, burst out a buzzing tremor, and broke through the air again. Gu Jin was wearing a black long gown with wide sleeves and long swings. He held a book in one hand and danced with a sword in the other. His eyes fell on the book, but the sword moved with his heart. Regardless of its power, at least, if someone saw this picture of sword dancing in the bamboo forest, they would definitely be surprised by the charm revealed in it. Just like the only bystander at this time, the old man guarding the book pavilion. The old man was originally attracted by Gu Jin's sudden jump out of the window, and then he saw him take out his long sword and fiddle with it. At first, he didn't care. It was normal to want to do it when studying the way of the sword. But soon his eyes were attracted, and then his turbid eyes became brighter. He was not shocked by Gu Jin's swordsmanship, but he saw something rarely seen in Gu Jin, which was something that most sword practitioners lacked in the past 10 years. Charm. In this era of fighting, the essence of practice is to survive, to make oneself stronger, to protect oneself and the people around. Therefore, what practitioners care about most about the power of skills, martial arts, abilities, etc. Even if some amazing people have understood the sword momentum and sword meaning early, and even entered the Tao with swords, the pursuit of swords among these people is still inseparable from the word powerful. This is right. Practice swordsmanship, day after day, boring and hard. Isn't it for the purpose of becoming stronger? That's why he said that most sword practitioners lack the charm of Tao. The charm is not about strength or swordsmanship, it is a feeling. When people see it, they will feel that, well, this person's sword is very different. In fact, it should not be said that other people lack charm, but it should be said that Gu Jin's sword actually has charm. It is reasonable to say that other people are reasonable, and he is abnormal. Gu Jin's sword is the most basic move. In just 2 or 3 days, such precision and calmness are already considered to be very talented in the sword. But there are people who can match him. There are several famous sword students in the academy alone. But the charm of Gu Jin's sword dance made the old man look at him with new eyes. Pleasing to the eyes. This may be the most appropriate description of the old man's ability. The long robe is like ink, the sword is dark green, the ink mark swept through the air, and the sword screamed. Unconsciously, the old man fell into this picture. Until Gu Jin frowned, distressed and puzzled, and stopped as if he was extremely dissatisfied with his progress. The ancient longsword was casually inserted into the ground crookedly, and the book was closed. What's going on? I clearly feel that I am getting closer and closer, and even my sword has an inexplicable change, but I am just one step away. Gu Jin lowered his head and thought. He was chasing the gap between himself and the sword. In this process, his sword has undergone changes that he can't explain, but this did not make him feel that he was getting closer and closer to the gap. It's still like chasing a wisp of invisible wind. Can't grasp it, can't grasp it. Gu Jin sighed lightly, kendo, took back the space ring, picked up the bronze long sword on the ground, hung it casually by his side, opened the folding fan with a snap, and left casually. It was not until Gu Jin's figure disappeared at the end of the bamboo forest that the old man came back to his senses and looked around. He saw that the lights had been turned on. The green bamboo was illuminated by a faint light, and the green bamboo became as red as maple. Gu Jin left the library, passed by the hall that had been empty for a long time, crossed the winding wooden bridge across the country, and finally appeared in the eyes of the 2 people who had been waiting for him. Chen Shun and Liu had been waiting since the afternoon, and saw the golden light in the west. When the golden light faded and the lights came on, they finally saw the man appear under the reflection of 2 rows of gorgeous palace lanterns. In an instant, Liu immediately stood up, put his hands behind his back, stood sideways, raised his chin slightly, and looked sideways, perfectly showing the word, arrogant. Chen Shin's eyes were even more frighteningly bright, and the feeling of impatience almost overflowed, so strong that Gu Jin saw it from a distance, and felt inexplicably hairy and a sense of retreat. It's not that he's cowardly, but which normal man wouldn't face the challenge when seeing such a fiery look from his same S***X? Here I come, finally out. Chen Shun showed an excited smile that Gu Jin couldn't understand. He gritted his teeth as if he saw the murderer of his father, but he laughed arrogantly and contemptuously. I really don't understand. Gu Jin waved his folding fan and whispered, but he did see one thing, the 2 people were waiting here. Obviously waiting for him. They were enemies, not friends, and they were not kind. Chen Shin was defeated by him, so the one next door was the reinforcement he brought? Gu Jin looked at the man with a concave shape. His body was thin, making his facial bones protrude, and his deep eye sockets were particularly eye-catching, which was even more obvious at night. Chen Shen looked at him, and the other person ignored him. Gu Jin waved his folding fan and walked out, getting closer and closer to the two people, but the two people still didn't speak until he passed them and walked a few meters away. "Stop!" Chen Shen shouted angrily. Snap! Gu Jin closed his folding fan and turned around, a faint smile on his lips. It seemed that he had won this game where he was not allowed to talk. Episode 19. Here comes the money deliverer. Today I invited a master to challenge you. Do you dare? Chen Shen originally thought that Gu Jin would see him waiting here and ask in confusion if there was anything wrong. He would answer arrogantly, but unfortunately, Gu Jin had no intention of asking. If he hadn't asked, he would have left directly. Master? Gu Jin raised his eyebrows and moved his eyes from Chen Shen to the man in the pose. How high? Cultivating Qi realm. Chen Shen said loudly, and his self-satisfied and arrogant look made people think he was talking about himself. Lu Yu also raised his chin at the right time and glanced at Gu Jin with contempt, and then seemed to be very disdainful, looking up at the sky. Cultivating Qi realm? Gu Jin murmured. What? Are you scared? If you're scared, just say it. Chen Shen said disdainfully. Gu Jin smiled and shook his head, and asked, It's okay to challenge, but you know the rules, right? Bang! Chen Shen took out a large suitcase and smashed it on the ground. 10,000 primary spirit stones are here, take it if you have one. Gu Jin saw the briefcase and thought that he had finally caught a fish, but he did not agree. He shook his head and said no. No? What's wrong? Didn't I ask for a bet of 10,000 primary spirit stones to challenge you? Chen Shen's eyes widened, and then he said with a disdainful and sarcastic tone, Or are you afraid and don't dare? Gu Jin was a little helpless. Doesn't this guy have any other tricks except provoking? I did say that I would accept the challenge if there were 10,000 primary spirit stones as a bet, but for the body refining realm, as for nourishing qi, it must not be this price. Gu Jin smiled and looked at Lu Yu. Otherwise, wouldn't the master you invited lose his status? He even emphasized the word master. What do you want? Chen Shen said, almost gritting his teeth. Well, Gu Jin pondered for a moment, raised his hand, and held up his palm. Chen Shen's eyes were almost popping out, and even Lu Yu was so shocked that he forgot to maintain his posture. Gu Jin noticed that he immediately retracted his little finger and saw that the expressions of the two people had improved slightly, but they were still scary. He continued to retract his ring finger, but the expressions of the two people still couldn't accept it. Finally, he had to retract his thumb. Okay, 20,000 spirit stones. Lu Yu was provoked by Gu Jin, and he immediately agreed without waiting for Chen Shen to speak. This. Chen Shen looked at him. I'll pay. Lu Yu snorted, stepped forward, and looked at Gu Jin coldly. Come on. Hey. Seeing that he agreed, Gu Jin immediately smiled and agreed. The smiling look made people who didn't know think that someone invited him to dinner, and he agreed happily. Buzz. Take off the 8-sided Qin Dynasty bronze sword hanging on his waist. The way he holds the sword is really a layman, but the moment he holds the sword, it gives people a different feeling. Come on. Gu Jin smiled elegantly and looked at his challenger. Lu Yu frowned, and the master's demeanor he had just deliberately collapsed, but the sinister aura became stronger. Then I won't be polite. Lu Yu's face turned cold, and his words were cold. While his voice was still slow, his figure disappeared silently like a ghost. It was a residual image. And he himself had appeared behind Gu Jin, stretching out his palm with sharp finger bones. His nails were extremely sharp, flowing with the luster of metal, tearing the air and going straight to Gu's neck. A person in the Qi Yang realm attacked a person in the second stage of the body refinement from behind. People's behavior does not reveal their own personality everywhere. Especially in a duel, when instincts are mobilized, the subconscious is the most real. Although Gu Jin looked relaxed and casual at the beginning, he did not underestimate the opponent at all. Qi nourishing realm. This was something he had never encountered before, and he had only had one experience of fighting, and that time was solved instantly, which did not help him grow his combat experience at all. Therefore, when he saw the two, his mental power had already been deployed, locking Lu Yu tightly. Although his sword-holding posture was casual, his mind was focused, and his whole body was in a state of high alert. When Lu Yu used a deceptive body movement to attack, the afterimage he left behind deceived Gu Jin's eyes, but could not deceive his mental power. Therefore, when he disappeared, Gu Jin had already reacted. The sharp claws grabbed like an eagle's hook, and Gu Jin suddenly exploded, and his figure rushed forward quickly. Although he had not learned any body movements, with his current physical fitness, coupled with the brain's 100% subtle control of the body, it only took a moment for him to go from extreme stillness to extreme movement. In one step, he was dozens of meters away, like a thick ink under the moonlight. Lu Yu had originally made a confident attack, intending to subdue Gu Jin with one claw, torture Chen Shin to vent his anger, and then take the 10,000 primary spirit stones and leave, and find a place to celebrate and have fun. But Gu Jin could actually detect his sudden attack and react, and this kind of explosive power and speed is definitely not something that an ordinary second-level body refiner can have. A natural awakener? Lu Yu narrowed his eyes slightly, and a cold luster filled the air. He didn't think that Gu Jin was the kind of top genius or a brilliant person who could have qualifications that ordinary people couldn't match, so his strength was far beyond the same level. Because if Gu Jin was a genius, he wouldn't be only at the second level now. So, the other party is likely to be a natural awakener. In a thought, he defined Gu Jin, but Lu Yu didn't stop. His silent figure followed Gu Jin like a ghost, and the sharp breath of his claws lingered on the back of Gu Jin's neck. With his character, he is a cautious person no matter what he does. He will not underestimate his opponent just because he is weak. He will still go all out. Only after defeating the opponent can he enjoy victory and be proud. Gu Jin did not expect Lu Yu to be so fast. After he dodged, he was obviously stunned, but he still chased him, threatening his fatal point all the time. Is this the strength of the Qi-nourishing realm? With spiritual energy, the strength of the practitioners has changed dramatically. With various martial arts and body techniques that cooperate with spiritual energy, the practitioners in the Qi-nourishing realm are crushed against the physical training realm. Gu Jin has no chance to turn around now. Once he stops, Lu Yu's claws will fall on his neck. If he wants to turn around and swing his sword to block, it will be too late. But Gu Jin is not in a hurry at this moment. He is immersed in a clear state of mind. His consciousness is calm, his mind is clear, his brain is thinking, and his mental power is sensing the opponent's slightest movement. Step. Gu Jin stopped, and Lu Yu's serious hatred flashed, and his men were merciless. But Gu Jin did not turn around to resist. Instead, he raised his right hand while stopping. He did not use the sword to block, but instead struck from behind with his elbow. Episode 20. Battle against Yangqi Realm. Bang! A solid collision sound was heard, and Gu Jin's elbow hit Lu Yu's wrist accurately. The heavy force immediately knocked away Lu Yu's hand that was attacking his neck. Gu Jin bought time to turn around. At the moment his wrist was hit, Lu Yu's face changed, and a strong force came. Fortunately, he had used all his strength before, and his hands were condensed with spiritual energy, covering the palm to the forearm. But even so, his spiritual power was mainly concentrated in the fingertips, and his wrist was relatively weak. He was almost directly broken up, causing his wrist to be damaged. Although he was not injured now, his wrist muscles and bones were still slightly uncomfortable. Gu Jin turned around with his right foot as the axis and came to Lu Yu's side in a fluttering robe. He raised his right hand and slashed down with a sword. Buzz. The sword rang lightly, but it was swift, breaking through the air and slashing towards Lu Yu's wrist. Lu Yu's eyes were cold and fierce, and he was coming again? With a turn of his wrist, the spiritual energy in his body was mobilized, his fingertips were sharp, and the blood in his body was surging. He could hear the sound of whistling. He was in the state of nourishing qi. No matter how strong he was in all aspects, he was above Gu Jin. Clang! The long sword and the sharp claws collided, making a metallic buzzing sound. The sword in Gu Jin's hand hummed violently, and the huge force came through the long sword, making him almost unable to hold the sword, and the long sword could not help but rise. Lu Yu's sharp claws went straight to Gu Jin's neck. One of them was thinking about the other's wrist, and the other was worried about the other's neck. Facing the crisis at hand, Gu Jin did not have the slightest urgent fear. His eyes were still as calm as a lake under the moonlight, and even his face was still smiling elegantly, and his whole body was filled with calmness. In fact, Gu Jin had expected this to happen. Isn't this obvious? In the state of nourishing qi, the minimum strength is 10,000 kilograms. With the increase of spiritual energy, how could his strength of less than 9,000 kilograms be able to resist? But Gu Jin still chose this way. Relying on his swordsmanship, which he thought was unreliable, he used the second-level extreme of body training to challenge the realm of nourishing qi. The long sword was swung up. Although it was clearly broken by someone, Gu Jin had a kind of free and easy charm. He swung the sword, raised his wrist lightly, and turned the sword tip horizontally between the neck and Lu Yu's claws. Ding! Lu Yu ignored his resistance and still attacked with powerful force and condensed spiritual energy. The long sword was swung away again with a sad cry. But this time, the long sword that was swung away swung an arc, using the previous force to go straight to Lu Yu's neck at a weird angle. Your target is my neck, and my target is also your neck. Gu Jin's long sword broke through the air with a blue mark. Lu Yu's expression changed slightly. Holding the sword, the attack distance is always better than empty hands. He is afraid that before he can touch Gu Jin's hair, he will put his neck on the tip of the opponent's sword as if he is delivering it to the door. Helpless, Liu slapped his sharp claws horizontally with a gloomy expression, and with a clang, he once again swung Gu Jin's sword away. However, Gu Jin's sword was swung away, but it turned back even faster, and the tip of the sword was still aimed at his neck. Clang! 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 Chun stared at the duel in a daze, his eyes full of disbelief and astonishment. He really couldn't believe that the waste, the well-known sludge, could actually fight with a warrior in the Yangtze realm to such a tense situation. The current situation is very strange. Except for the quick movement at the beginning, the subsequent fights between the two were limited to 2 steps. Liu attacked Gu Jin unstoppably, but was forced to resist by his twisted sword. Gu Jin took advantage of his resistance and turned his sword faster than the other. In the end, Liu's hands were filled with white light, and he laid down many claw shadows in the void, but he was forced to defend. Gu Jin, on the other hand, held the long sword, and his wrist changed the angle all the time, and even the fingers holding the hilt kept changing the strength of holding the hilt. The ancient bronze sword hummed shrilly, tearing the air sharply, and the green sword shadows were everywhere. In fact, this strange stalemate was caused by Liu being irritated by Gu Jin. He was unwilling to face the fact that someone who was 1 level lower than him actually wanted to retreat. In fact, as long as he took a step back, he could get rid of the current situation. Because there was a gap between Gu Jin and his strength. The current stalemate was due to his stubbornness to break through Gu Jin head-on, but Gu Jin attacked him where he had to save with every sword, using attack instead of defense. This situation, in fact, was that Liu was attacking hard and Gu Jin was on the edge of a cliff, but it looked like Gu Jin was suppressing Liu. Even Liu, who was originally cautious and gloomy, could not help but fall into a contest. As for Gu Jin, at this time, his heart was pounding like thunder, absorbing spiritual energy. Golden flames were burning, forging spiritual energy, and blood with star-pointed golden flames was surging and whistling, providing energy for the whole body. He went all out with every sword. But he felt full of energy, strong blood, and abundant strength. He was not tired or exhausted at all. Instead, he was a little bit like practicing swordsmanship with Liu. See if he could make his uninitiated swordsmanship improve. Unfortunately, it seems that Liu's realm is not enough. Gu Jin sighed. He planned to end this duel. Boom! The golden flame of the heart swept through the blood and spread all over the body. The brilliant and burning breath burst out from the sword tip. Puff! When Liu tried to slap Gu Jin's long sword with his palm again, a stream of scarlet blood splashed out, which was extremely conspicuous even under the night sky. Severe pain came, Liu's eyes widened, his pupils shrank, and he looked at the spiritual energy on his palm in horror, and his palm was almost cut off by a sword. Puff! Puff! 2 consecutive sounds of flesh and blood cutting came, and Liu's other palm was disabled. Finally, Gu Jin's bronze ancient sword pierced his neck unstoppably. The tip of the sword stopped after piercing a little, but a stream of blood still splashed out. Liu didn't dare to move. If he moved, Gu Jin's sword would completely penetrate his neck. His heart was like a tsunami, and he looked at Gu Jin, who was standing in front of him in horror. Until now, he still hasn't come back to his senses. How did the other party break the spiritual energy condensed in his hand? This is simply impossible. But now it is happening in front of him. The intense pain in his hand and the breath of death threatening his neck all told him that this is reality. Why, how could it be like this? Liu looked at Gu Jin with a dazed look. He still couldn't believe that the breath revealed by Gu Jin when he took action was only the extreme of the second stage of body refining, but he showed a terrifying offensive power. I am willing to accept the loss, Elixir. Gu Jin did not answer his question, but said lightly, with the same elegant smile on his face, which had never changed from beginning to end. Piao Piao glanced at Chun lightly, and Chun, who was petrified, woke up immediately. His eyes were full of fear and shock. He nodded almost instinctively and threw the suitcase over with trembling body.